Hi everyone. Today we're diving into rare World War II photos that show shocking, never-before-seen moments from the front lines and behind the scenes of history. Column of German prisoners on a road outside of Metz, France, November 1944, being marched under guard after the heavy battles for the city. Soldiers with the 47th Infantry Regiment, 9th Infantry Division, passed through Grisenic, Germany, November to December 1944. Ocean liner RMS Mauritania arrives at the Liverpool docks carrying soldiers and civilians from Singapore, some of which had been prisoners of the Japanese. 28th of November 1945. British soldier gives the thumbs up while escorting the first German prisoners captured by the Tobruk garrison. 28th of November 1941. Marine Corps Thanksgiving on the Russell Islands, November 1943. As troops paused from the Pacific Campaign to share a rare holiday meal far from home. British Army and U.S. Army combat photographers working together in Italy. 27 November 1943, documenting frontline operations during the Italian campaign. An Indian soldier guards a universal carrier, which was converted into an ad hoc tank by the Japanese, then taken over by Indonesian nationalists after the surrender in Surabaya. 27 November 1945. Churchill Memke IV of the 6th Guards, Tank Brigade in Teenray, Netherlands. 26 November 1944, moving forward during operations to clear remaining German positions in the area. Sailors clearing away plane wreckage in the hangar deck of USS Intrepid CV-11 after she was hit by 2 kamikazes off the Philippines. November 25, 1944. Sailor cleaning the decks on USS Texas, BB-35, with a water hose. 1942, as routine maintenance continued during wartime operations in the Atlantic. Soldiers in a jeep with the 104th Infantry Division Timberwolves in Stolberg, Germany, November 1944, during the division's advance toward the Ruhr industrial region. Remy fitters attached to 4th 7th Dragoon Guards work on the tracks for a Sherman III in the mud and rain near Geilenkirchen, Germany, 25 November 1944. Mine detecting party from the Pioneer Platoon of 1st South Lancashire, Regit, 3rd UK Infantry Division at work near Venray in the Netherlands, 25 November 1944. Trooper Williamson of the 4th 7th Royal Dragoon Guards with a rescue dog in the ruins of a house on the outskirts of Geilenkirchen, Germany, 25 November 1944. Sapper of the 2nd Polish Corps, bandaging the finger of another during the Tuscan-Emilian Apennines campaign in Italy, 25 November 1944. 4 soldiers with the U.S. 9th Infantry Division in a dugout in Morocco, November 1942, shortly after the Allied landings during Operation Torch. A German Panther tank in Romania, August 1944. A rare photo indeed, taken during the Jassy Kishinev operations as German forces attempted to slow the Soviet advance. German soldier in fear during WWII. Many troops face constant danger, harsh conditions, and long periods of exhaustion as battles shifted rapidly on multiple fronts. American and German soldiers wait, side by side, in a makeshift morgue, a grim reminder of how frontline battles often forced enemies into the same spaces during brief lulls in the fighting. Rudolf Höss, the commandant of the Auschwitz concentration camp, is hanged next to the crematorium at the camp, 1947. Carrying out the sentence handed down after he admitted his role in the mass killings. A Soviet spy laughing in the face of death, maintaining a defiant calm even as his captors prepared his final interrogation. A U.S. soldier offering help to a Japanese woman hiding in a cave, a scene that echoed many Pacific battles where civilians sheltered underground during the fighting. Battle of Berlin. Shelling felt like forever, so many. City center destroyed, rubble, still heavy fighting. Here tanks go through. Look at building, its facade barely standing after days of bombardment as troops push forward street by street. These people freed from a cattle car, going to a concentration camp. Look at faces. Who does this to them? This is why we fight, to stop this. 1945. Children. child in camps. Many were separated from families and struggled to survive the harsh conditions, facing hunger and disease every day. 1944. Stupid German stuck in mud. Mud is Russian best friend, slowing entire columns and trapping vehicles during the autumn Rasputitsa. 1943. British soldiers, after their release from Japanese captivity in Singapore, 1945, weakened by months of starvation and hard labor, yet finally stepping back into freedom. Sergeant Leonard Siflete, moments before being executed by a Japanese officer in WWII, captured during operations in New Guinea and forced to face his fate with no hope of rescue. Queen Elizabeth during her war service, WWII, working as a mechanic and driver in the Auxiliary Territorial Service, while insisting on serving like any other volunteer. Soviet soldiers with lowered standards of the defeated Nazi forces during the Victory Day Parade in Moscow on June 24, 1945. Gaunt and emaciated, but happy at their release from Japanese captivity, 2 Allied prisoners pack their meager belongings after being freed near Yokohama, Japan, on September 11, 1945, by men of an American Mercy Squadron of the U.S. Navy. Red Army photographer Yevgeny Kalday center in Berlin with Soviet forces near the Brandenburg Gate in May of 1945, documenting the final days of the war as soldiers secured the shattered city. Many of Germany's captured new and experimental aircraft were displayed in an exhibition as part of London's Thanksgiving Week on September 14, 1945. Among the aircraft are a number of jet and rocket-propelled planes. Here, a side view of the Heinkel He-162 Volksjäger, propelled by a turbojet unit mounted above the fuselage in Hyde Park in London. 1 year after the D-Day landings in Normandy, German prisoners landscaped the first U.S. cemetery at Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer, France, near Omaha Beach on May 28, 1945. The supertransport ship General W.P. Richardson docked in New York on June 7, 1945, with veterans of the European War cheering as they stepped onto American soil again. Many had fought from the deserts of North Africa to the brutal mountain battles in Italy, carrying years of hardship, loss, and endurance as they finally returned home. On May 21st, Colonel Byrd, commandant of Belsen Camp, gave the order for the last hut at Belsen concentration camp to be burned. A rifle salute was fired in honor of the dead. The British flag was run up at the same moment as a flamethrower set fire to the last hut. A German flag and portrait of Hitler went up in flames inside the hut in June of 1945. German mothers walked their children to school through the streets of Aachen, Germany, on June 6, 1945, for registration at the first public school opened by the U.S. military government after the war, a small step in rebuilding daily life as families tried to return to normal amid the ruins. After Lisieux was liberated in August 1944, locals welcomed British soldiers with small gestures like offering cider and food showing gratitude for the end of German occupation. Canadian sniper Lance Corporal A.P. Proctor, cleaning his Enfield No. 4 MKI-T rifle in Italy, 24th of November 1943, taking a rare moment of rest as Allied forces pushed through harsh terrain and difficult winter fighting. Sappers of 225 Field Company, Royal Engineers, removed shells placed by the Germans to destroy a crossroads near Faenza, Italy, 24th of November 1944, carefully clearing booby traps and demolition, charges so Allied units could continue their advance. Marines take a rest by an LVT on the beach at Tarawa, November 23, 1943, exhausted after days of brutal fighting on the tiny atoll, where every yard of sand had to be won under intense fire. Picture taken on USS Essex, CV-9, off Tarawa, November 1943, as the carrier's crew worked non-stop to launch and recover aircraft, supporting the fierce battle unfolding on the islands below. Soldier with the 104th Infantry Division, Timberwolves, with German prisoners in Stolberg, Germany, November 1944, during the hard push toward the Ruhr as tired troops moved street by street through the battered city. Late November 1944, German prisoners in Strasbourg are searched and processed by the French 2nd Armored Division before being handed over to U.S. forces for transport to the rear. A German officer awaiting his fate in the ruins, eating rations from the U.S. Army on March 22, 1945, in Saarbrücken, Germany, sitting among the shattered buildings as the front collapsed and surrender became unavoidable. M4 Sherman crew and equipment, additional weapons and ammunition, 1943, preparing for the next push as tankers checked their gear, loaded supplies, and kept their vehicle ready for long hours on the move. German soldiers take a 10-minute break on their march to Paris near Reims, France, 1940, resting by the roadside as the rapid advance continued across northern France during the early weeks of the campaign. 81 years ago today, First Sergeant John Morton of the 6th Armored Division points to the bullet hole in his helmet after being ambushed in France, November 17, 1944. A narrow escape that showed how close combat could turn deadly in an instant on the Western Front. 2 U.S. Army MPs are slightly amused interrogating 2 German grade school children pressed into military service as the war was winding down. In general, any German soldier under 17 was briefly interrogated and then allowed to return home. Canadian soldiers, one armed with a German-made STG-44 assault rifle, keep away from the water aboard a LVT-4 of the British XXX Corps, nicknamed Skegness, in a flooded village. The village was deliberately flooded by German forces to slow the Allied advance. Louth, Holland, February 10, 1945. A B-26 Marauder drops bombs on a German installation in France, 1944. Part of the relentless Allied air campaign targeting bridges, rail lines, and fortified positions ahead of the ground advance. 83 years ago today, November 23, 1942, the crew of an M3 Lee medium tank of the 1st Armored Division take a break from the action near Souk El Arba, Tunisia, catching their breath during the early, hard-fought weeks of the North African campaign. A British HP-52 Hampton does a low pass over USS South Dakota as sailors practice their aim during training exercises in the Atlantic Ocean. In the background, USS Alabama and HMS Duke of York steam in formation, part of routine drills carried out during the long crossings. A group of German prisoners of war, still wearing their old uniforms and equipment, load onto a New York Central Railroad train under the watch of armed American soldiers in Boston, Massachusetts. Date unknown, part of the routine transfers to POW camps across the United States. American pilots and P-40 Warhawks of the Flying Tigers in Burma, 1941, preparing for missions against Japanese forces as the volunteer group carried out daring low-level attacks in the early months of the war. A Danish Army artillery crew prior to the invasion in April 1940, standing by their guns during those tense early days as Europe watched Germany advance across the continent. The soldiers maintained routine drills and preparedness, not yet knowing how quickly the attack would come or how overwhelmed their defenses would soon become. An American soldier poses beneath a 4.6 mm M1919 Mark III coastal gun at the Aberdeen test site, Maryland, July 1943. This huge experimental installation was used to study blast effects and long-range accuracy, helping engineers refine coastal defenses and heavy artillery performance during the war. A Soviet T-34-85 medium tank of the 7th Guards Tank Corps advances cautiously with infantry support in the suburbs of Berlin, April 1945, pushing through shattered streets and scattered resistance as the Red Army closed in on the city's final defensive lines. A Lewis machine gunner of the Saskatoon Light Infantry near Potenza, 20th of September 1943, keeping watch over the rugged Italian countryside as Allied forces advanced slowly through difficult terrain, facing both enemy fire and the challenges of mountainous warfare. Cressona Defense Plant in Cressona, Pennsylvania, assembling anti-aircraft guns in 1942, with workers rushing to meet wartime demand, as factories across the United States shifted to around-the-clock production to supply the growing needs of the military. PFC George A. Guckenberger of the 506th PIR, 101st Airborne Division, in his foxhole during the Siege of Bastogne, 1944. He was KIA on January 14, 1945, and now rests for eternity at the Henri Chapelle American Cemetery in Belgium, plot E-Row 16, Grave 3. He was only 22. An American M4A1 carrying out invasion maneuvers on a Sherman M4 tank somewhere in England, photographed by H.F. Davis on 17th of February 1944. Troops trained rigorously in preparation for the upcoming Allied invasion of Europe, testing tactics, coordination, and tank performance under realistic conditions. An American soldier from the 29th Infantry Division, armed with a bazooka, runs past a knocked-out German Hetzer in Aldenhoven, Germany, 1944, advancing cautiously through contested streets while armored and infantry units work together to overcome entrenched enemy positions. An FM-1 aircraft having crashed into several TBF aircraft while landing on the flight deck of USS Coral Sea, 11th in October 1943, creating a chaotic scene as deck crews scrambled to prevent fire and further damage, highlighting the dangers of carrier operations during intense wartime sorties. The crew of a Soviet T-34-76 Mod May 1943 posed for the camera alongside other infantrymen during a pause in the advance towards German-occupied Prague, Czechoslovakia, early May 1945. Two soldiers of the 104th Infantry Division, Timberwolves, take a break near Stolberg, Germany, November 1944, resting briefly in the rubble-strewn streets after intense fighting, as the division pressed forward toward the German heartland during the hard winter campaign. Two Soviet infantrymen aim their rifles down the street next to the ruins of the Cathedral of St. Michael the Archangel and St. Florian, previously blown up by German forces during the Warsaw Uprising. Warsaw, Poland, September 1944. A city scarred by destruction as soldiers advanced cautiously through devastated streets to support resistance efforts and push back occupying forces. Indian troops in Iran, circa 1944, stationed along key supply routes and strategic positions, contributing to Allied efforts to secure the Middle East, protect vital oil fields, and support the flow of supplies to the Soviet Union through the Persian Corridor. Panzer IV and infantry of the 12th Panzer Division during the Battle of the Volkhov, USSR, spring 1942, advancing cautiously through muddy terrain and dense forests, facing fierce Soviet resistance in one of the harshest and deadliest campaigns on the Eastern Front. PFC Benny Barron of St. Louis, MO, from Item Co., 3rd Battalion, 8th Infantry Regiment, 4th U.S. Infantry Division, receives treatment from company medics, PFC Charles Naughty and PFC Thomas West, on the steep wooded slopes near the small village of Schevenhütte, on the northern edge of the Hürtgen Forest. Danica Dobovich being forced to drink castor oil, 1942, a cruel punishment used during the occupation to humiliate and coerce civilians, reflecting the harsh methods imposed on those living under wartime control. 82 years ago today, U.S. Marines on the hellscape of the Tarawa beachhead, Gilbert Islands, November 20, 1943, advancing under intense enemy fire across coral reefs and sand, facing brutal resistance in one of the most grueling amphibious assaults of the Pacific War. Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers from USS Essex, CV-9, in flight off Tarawa, November 1943, conducting precise bombing runs to weaken Japanese fortifications and provide close air support for the Marines landing on the heavily defended beaches of the atoll. Imperial Japanese Army troops holding up a bridge for their fellow soldiers during the Malayan Campaign, 1941-1942, ensuring the rapid advance through difficult terrain and dense jungle while maintaining momentum against retreating Allied forces. A British DUKW from Enraisk Transport Company ferries U.S. soldiers across the River Vaal at Nijmegen, 30 September 1944, supporting the Allied advance during Operation Market Garden and helping troops navigate the flooded and heavily defended waterways of the Netherlands. Sherman's of the 17th 21st Lancers lined up on the road north of San Benedetto, northern Italy, 27 September 1944, readying for the push toward Forlì as armored units coordinated with infantry to break through German defensive positions in the rugged Italian terrain. GIs of the 9th Infantry Division huddle in a slit trench on the eastern bank of the Roer River, February 1945, enduring bitter winter conditions and constant artillery fire as they prepared to cross the river and continue the Allied advance into the heart of Germany. Churchill, Monty, and Brooke take lunch next to the Rhine, 26 March 1945, a tablecloth covering the wicker basket as they shared a brief moment of respite, discussing strategy and observing the ongoing Allied operations along the river during the final months of the war in Europe. 2nd Lancashire Fusiliers wait for orders near an Achilles tank to advance. Ferrara, Italy, April 1945, poised to move through the city's rubble-strewn streets as armored and infantry units coordinated their final push against the remaining German defenders in northern Italy.